The gun barrel pressed cold against Olivia Porter's temple, and she stopped counting the ways men had stolen pieces of her soul. She stood perfectly still in the dusty street of Custer, South Dakota, her hands raised, her breath steady, despite the thunder of her heart, while the outlaw rifled through her satchel with his free hand, looking for the money she'd earned selling pies that morning in 1876. "Ain't much here," the man growled, his breath reeking of whiskey. "What else you got, girl?" Olivia had learned long ago that answering back only made things worse. She kept her eyes fixed on the general store across the street, where Mrs. Henderson peered through the window, too frightened to help. No one ever helped. That was the unspoken rule of being a woman alone in the West, a woman with no family, no protector, no value beyond what could be taken from her. The outlaw's fingers found the small leather purse tied at her waist. He yanked it free, breaking the cord, and Olivia felt the familiar emptiness that came with loss. Not the loss of money, though that hurt plenty, but the loss of another small piece of her dignity, her safety, her belief that she might ever be more than a target. "Move, and I'll paint this street with your brains," the man said, backing away with her earnings. Then a voice cut through the afternoon heat, like a blade through silk. "Drop the gun and the lady's money." The outlaw spun, and Olivia saw her assailant clearly for the first time. A wiry man with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, desperation etched into every line of his weathered face. But she wasn't looking at him anymore. Her attention had shifted to the man standing 20 feet away, tall and broad-shouldered, with a black hat casting shadows across features that seemed carved from stone. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the outlaw said, but his voice wavered. "I'm making it my business. Ladies shouldn't have to fear walking down the street in broad daylight." The stranger's hand hovered near his holster, relaxed but ready. "Now I asked you polite. Won't ask again." Olivia held her breath. She'd seen standoffs before, had watched men die over less than what her purse contained. She wanted to tell the stranger to let it go, that her money wasn't worth bloodshed, but her voice caught in her throat. The outlaw's eyes darted between the stranger and Olivia. Whatever he saw in the cowboy's face made his decision for him. He threw the purse to the ground and ran, disappearing between two buildings like a rat down a hole. The stranger walked forward, his boots raising small clouds of dust with each step. He bent and retrieved her purse, then her satchel, handling both with a care that surprised her. When he straightened and held them out, Olivia finally saw his eyes, gray as a winter sky, but warm in a way that made her chest tighten. "You hurt, miss?" he asked. Olivia shook her head, taking her belongings with trembling fingers. "No, thank you. Thank you. Name's Randall Pierce. Most folks call me Rand." He touched the brim of his hat, a gesture so genuinely courteous that Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time anyone had treated her with simple kindness, expecting nothing in return? "Olivia Porter," she managed. "I appreciate what you did. That was very brave." "Wasn't brave, just right." Rand glanced down the alley where the outlaw had fled. "You live nearby, Miss Porter? I'd feel better walking you home, in case that fellow gets any ideas about coming back." Every instinct told Olivia to refuse. She'd learned not to trust men, especially ones who played the hero. They always wanted something eventually, but standing in the street, still shaking from what had almost happened, she found herself nodding. "I have a room above the bakery," she said quietly. "It's just 2 streets over." They walked in silence at first, the afternoon sun beating down on them. Custer was a small town nestled in the Black Hills, filled with miners hoping to strike gold and merchants hoping to strike it rich off the miners. Olivia had arrived 6 months ago with nothing but the clothes on her back and a determination to survive. She'd found work at the bakery, and Mrs. Whitmore, the owner, had taken pity on her and offered the small room upstairs. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and that mattered more than anyone could know. "You new to Custer?" Rand asked, breaking the silence. "Been here since January." "You?" "Passing through on my way to Montana. Got a job waiting at a ranch up there." He paused. Or I did. Might have to send word that I'll be delayed. Olivia glanced at him sharply. Why would you do that? Because that fellow who tried to rob you? I've seen his face on a wanted poster. Name's Vernon Cass, wanted for robbery and murder down in Cheyenne. If he's here in Custer, the sheriff ought to know. And you might be in danger if he decides to come back and finish what he started. Fear coiled in Olivia's stomach. I didn't recognize him. No reason you should, but I make it a habit to study wanted posters wherever I go. Keeps a man alive. Rand's voice was matter of fact, not boasting, just stating truth. They reached the bakery, and Olivia stopped at the exterior stairs that led to her room. Thank you again, Mr. Pierce. I'll be careful. Rand, he corrected gently. And if it's all the same to you, I'd like to have a word with the sheriff about this. Make sure he knows Cass is in town. Would you be willing to give a statement? Olivia hesitated. Getting involved with the law meant attention, and attention was something she'd spent her whole life trying to avoid. But Rand was right. If Vernon Cass was dangerous, the sheriff needed to know. All right, she agreed. When? How about tomorrow morning? I'll come by at 9 if that suits you. Olivia nodded and climbed the stairs, feeling his eyes on her until she reached her door. She turned to offer a final goodbye, but he'd already tipped his hat and was walking back toward the main street, his long stride confident and unhurried. Inside her small room, Olivia sat on her narrow bed and opened her purse. The money was still there, every cent she'd earned selling her pies. She counted it twice, hardly believing her luck. Then she counted the ways this encounter was different from every other time a man had entered her life. Rand Pierce had asked for nothing, expected nothing. He'd helped because it was right, then walked away. Olivia lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to ignore the small flutter of hope in her chest. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. She'd learned that lesson over and over, starting with her father, who'd abandoned her mother when Olivia was 5, continuing with her mother's various suitors who'd seen young Olivia as either an inconvenience or something worse, and culminating with her mother's death 3 years ago, which had left Olivia alone in a world that measured a woman's worth by what could be taken from her. But Rand's gray eyes had looked at her differently, like she was a person deserving of respect and protection, not because of what she could give him, but simply because she existed. Olivia closed her eyes and told herself not to be a fool. One act of kindness didn't mean anything. By tomorrow, Rand Pierce would be on his way to Montana, and she'd never see him again. That was how life worked for women like her. The next morning, Olivia woke early and dressed in her best blouse and skirt, telling herself it had nothing to do with Rand's promised visit. She helped Mrs. Whitmore with the morning bread, her hands moving through the familiar motions of kneading and shaping, while her mind wandered. "You're distracted today, dear," Mrs. Whitmore observed. The older woman had kind eyes and flour perpetually dusting her gray hair. "Something on your mind?" Olivia told her about the robbery attempt and Rand's intervention. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes widened with concern, then narrowed thoughtfully. "Randall Pierce, you said?" "I know that name. He came by yesterday afternoon asking if we needed any work done. I told him we didn't, but Mrs. Henderson mentioned her stable roof needed fixing. He went straight over there and had it done by supper time. Wouldn't accept full payment, just enough to cover his lodging at the boarding house." Olivia's hands stilled in the dough. "Why would he do that?" Mrs. Whitmore smiled. "Some men are just built different, dear. My Henry was like that. God rest his soul. He believed in earning his way and helping where he could. Sounds like this Rand fellow might be cut from the same cloth." At precisely 9 o'clock, a knock came at the bakery door. Olivia wiped her hands on her apron and opened it to find Rand standing there, hat in hand, looking freshly shaved and somehow taller than she remembered. "Morning, Miss Porter. You still willing to speak with the sheriff?" "Yes, of course." Olivia untied her apron and grabbed her shawl. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'll be back soon." The older woman waved her off with a knowing smile that made Olivia's cheeks warm. The sheriff's office sat at the end of Main Street, a sturdy building that smelled of coffee and leather. Sheriff Dalton was a heavy-set man with a thick mustache and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened carefully as Olivia recounted the robbery attempt, occasionally jotting notes. Vernon Cass, you say? Dalton looked at Rand. You're sure it was him? Positive. Same scar, same build. I got a good look at him. Rand pulled a folded poster from his jacket. This came out of Cheyenne 3 weeks ago. The sheriff studied the poster and nodded grimly. I'll put out word to my deputies. Miss Porter, you be careful. Stick to busy streets. Don't go out after dark. Cass is dangerous, and if he's still in the area, he might hold a grudge. Olivia's stomach dropped. How long until he's caught? Hard to say. Could be today. Could be never if he's smart enough to move on. Dalton's expression softened. But I'll have men watching. You won't be alone in this. Outside, the morning sun had burned off the cool air, promising another hot day. Olivia stood on the boardwalk, trying to decide if she felt better or worse than before. Miss Porter? Rand's voice was gentle. I know that wasn't easy, but you did the right thing. I know, I thought maybe I could put it behind me. Olivia looked up at him. You should go to Montana, Mr. Pierce. You've done more than enough, and you have a job waiting. That job will keep. And it's Rand, remember? He studied her face, and Olivia felt exposed under his gaze, like he could see all the broken pieces she tried so hard to hide. Besides, I sent word yesterday that I'd be delayed. Told them I had important business to tend to here. I'm not important business, Olivia said automatically. The words came from years of being told she didn't matter. Wasn't worth the trouble, was just one more mouth to feed. Rand's expression shifted, something fierce and protective flashing in his gray eyes. That's where you're wrong, Miss Porter. Every person matters. Your safety matters. And if you don't mind me saying so, you deserve better than being afraid to walk down your own street. Olivia's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to push him away before he could disappoint her like everyone else had, but the sincerity in his voice stopped her. Why are you doing this? She asked instead. You don't know me. Don't need to know you to know right from wrong. Rand replaced his hat, adjusting the brim. Tell you what, how about I stick around a few days, just until the sheriff catches Cass or confirms he's left town? I can find work to keep me busy, and you'll have peace of mind. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. His smile was slow and warm. Besides, Mrs. Henderson said the boarding house serves terrible coffee. Maybe you could recommend somewhere better? Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling back. The bakery has the best coffee in town. Mrs. Whitmore makes it fresh every morning. Then I'll have to stop by tomorrow, if that's all right with you. I think that would be fine, Olivia said softly. Rand tipped his hat and walked away, and Olivia stood watching him go, that dangerous flutter of hope returning to her chest. Over the next week, Rand became a fixture in Olivia's life. He stopped by the bakery every morning for coffee, sitting at the small table by the window and chatting with Mrs. Whitmore while Olivia worked. He never lingered too long or made her uncomfortable, but his presence was steady, reliable, like a rock in a rushing stream. He found work easily enough. Custer was full of people who needed an extra pair of strong hands, and Rand seemed capable of anything, mending fences, repairing roofs, shoeing horses. Olivia heard about him from the other women in town, how polite he was, how hard he worked, how he'd helped old Mr. Thompson carry his supplies without being asked. That cowboy friend of yours is quite something, Mrs. Henderson said one afternoon, stopping by the bakery for bread. Fixed my stable roof better than it ever was, and now he's helping at the livery. Mr. Granger says he's got a natural way with horses. Olivia's cheeks warmed at the phrase, cowboy friend of yours, but she didn't correct it. The truth was, she looked forward to Rand's morning visits more than she wanted to admit. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm of conversation, talking about everything and nothing. The weather, books they'd read, places they'd been. Slowly, Rand's story emerged. He'd grown up on a ranch in Texas, lost his parents to fever when he was 16, and spent the last 8 years working his way north, saving money to buy land of his own someday. He was 24, 2 years older than Olivia, and he spoke about the future with a quiet certainty that she envied. Olivia shared less of her own history, but Rand never pushed. He seemed content to let her reveal herself in her own time, and that patience meant more than he could know. On the 8th day after the robbery attempt, Sheriff Dalton came to the bakery. Olivia's heart jumped to her throat when she saw his grim expression. "We found Vernon Cass," Dalton said without preamble. "He was holed up in an abandoned mining shack 5 miles outside town. Tried to run when my deputies approached. He didn't make it." "He's dead," Olivia whispered. Dalton nodded. "Shot himself rather than be taken. It's over, Miss Porter. You're safe now." Relief flooded through Olivia, so strong her knees weakened. Mrs. Whitmore rushed over to steady her, guiding her to a chair. "Thank you, Sheriff," Mrs. Whitmore said. "We appreciate you keeping us informed." After Dalton left, Olivia sat with her head in her hands, trying to process the news. She was safe. The threat was gone, but instead of joy, she felt a strange sadness because now there was no reason for Rand to stay. As if summoned by her thoughts, Rand appeared in the doorway. One look at her face, and he was across the room, kneeling beside her chair. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Sheriff found Vernon Cass. He's dead." Olivia met Rand's eyes. "It's over. You can go to Montana now." Rand was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What if I don't want to?" Olivia's breath caught. "What?" "That job in Montana, it's just a job. I can find work anywhere." Rand's voice was steady, but his eyes held an intensity that made her pulse race. "These past days, getting to know you, this town. Olivia, I think maybe I found something worth staying for." "You can't mean that." Olivia shook her head, old fears rising. "You don't really know me. Once you do, you'll see I'm not worth—" "Stop!" Rand's hand covered hers, warm and calloused. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. Really hear it. Your worth isn't measured by what people have taken from you. Not your money, not your trust, not your safety. Those are things that were stolen, but they don't define who you are." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Then what does? Who you are right here, right now. The woman who gets up every morning and works hard, who treats people with kindness even after the world's been unkind to her, who's brave enough to keep going when it would be easier to give up." Rand's thumb traced gentle circles on her hand. "That's who you are, Olivia, and that's the woman I'd like to know better, if you'll let me." A sob broke free, and then another, and Olivia found herself crying in a way she hadn't let herself cry in years. Mrs. Whitmore quietly left through the back door, giving them privacy. Rand moved to sit beside Olivia, his arm around her shoulders, solid and safe, while she wept for all the losses she'd endured and all the times she'd believed the lie that she was worthless. When the tears finally subsided, Olivia felt scraped raw, but somehow lighter, like she'd set down a burden she'd been carrying too long. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes. "I didn't mean to fall apart like that." "Don't apologize. You're entitled to your feelings." Rand offered her his handkerchief, and Olivia took it gratefully. "I meant what I said, Olivia. I'd like to stay in Custer if you're willing to give me a chance. No promises, no pressure. Just a chance to court you proper and see where it leads." Olivia looked at him, this man who'd stepped into her life like an answer to a prayer she'd been afraid to voice. Everything in her past screamed that this was a mistake, that she'd regret trusting him, that he'd turn out like all the others. But something deeper, some small spark of hope that refused to die, whispered that maybe this time could be different. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "I'd like that very much." Rand's smile, was like sunrise breaking over mountains. Then it settled. I'll find permanent work here in Custer, and we'll take things slow. Get to know each other right. Over the following months, Rand proved true to his word. He took a job at the livery, working alongside Mr. Granger, and rented a small room above the saddle shop. He courted Olivia with old-fashioned propriety, walks after church on Sunday, picnics by the creek when the weather was fine, conversations on the bakery steps in the evening while fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. Olivia learned that Rand was a man of quiet strength and deep principles. He didn't drink to excess, didn't gamble, didn't lose his temper. When conflicts arose, he faced them with calm reason. When people needed help, he offered it without fanfare. He was exactly what he appeared to be: decent, honest, and kind. But more than that, he saw Olivia in a way no one else ever had. When she shared stories of her difficult childhood, he listened without judgment. When she confessed her fears about not being good enough, he challenged those beliefs with gentle persistence. When she achieved small victories, mastering a new recipe, saving enough money to buy fabric for a new dress, he celebrated with genuine joy. "You don't have to keep proving yourself to me," he told her one evening as they sat by the creek, watching the sun set over the Black Hills. "I already know your worth, Olivia. I see it every day in 100 small ways." "Sometimes I still can't believe you're real," Olivia admitted, "that you want to be with me." Rand turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I want to tell you about my mother. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. My father loved her something fierce, and you know what he told me before he died? He said the measure of a man isn't what he takes from life, but what he gives. And the measure of a good marriage is two people who see the best in each other and help bring it out." He paused, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "My parents had that. They lifted each other up every day, even when things were hard. That's what I want, Olivia. A partnership built on respect and love and seeing each other truly. And when I look at you, I see someone I could build that kind of life with." Olivia's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. "I see that too," she whispered. "I'm just learning how. Then we'll learn together." Rand lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so tender that Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again. But these were happy tears, so different from the ones she'd cried for so long. As autumn painted the hills in shades of gold and crimson, Rand and Olivia's relationship deepened. They became a familiar sight around Custer, the tall cowboy and the baker's assistant, clearly smitten with each other. The townspeople approved, having taken the measure of both of them and found them worthy. Mrs. Whitmore was particularly pleased. "I knew the moment I saw him that he was special," she told Olivia one morning. "My Henry had that same quality, a goodness that goes bone deep." In October, Rand asked Olivia to accompany him to the harvest dance. It would be their first public event as a couple, and Olivia spent days altering one of her old dresses, adding lace at the collar and cuffs to make it pretty. When Rand saw her, his expression of awestruck admiration made all the effort worthwhile. "You're beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. The dance was held in the church hall, which had been decorated with autumn leaves and wildflowers. A fiddle player and a man with a guitar provided music, and the townspeople gathered to celebrate another successful harvest. Olivia had never attended such an event before, always too afraid of drawing attention, of being seen. But with Rand at her side, his hand warm at the small of her back, she felt safe enough to enjoy herself. They danced 3 waltzes, Rand leading with easy confidence, and Olivia following, her feet barely touching the floor. Between dances, they talked with neighbors and shared cups of cider, and Olivia realized with wonder that she was happy, was genuinely, deeply happy. Near the end of the evening, they stepped outside for air. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust. Rand led Olivia to a quiet corner of the churchyard, away from the noise and light. "I have something to ask you," he said, and Olivia's heart began to race. "I know we haven't been courting long by some standards, But when you know, you know. My father told me that too. He said he knew my mother was the one the first week they met, and they were married within 3 months. Rand reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Olivia saw a simple gold band with a small sapphire, modest but beautiful in the starlight. This was my mother's ring, Rand said softly. It's the only thing of hers I kept. Olivia Porter, I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your courage. I love the way you see the best in people and the way you never give up, no matter how hard things get. I want to spend my life showing you that you're valued and cherished, not for what you do or what you have, but simply for being you. He knelt on one knee, heedless of the dirt, and looked up at her with those steady gray eyes. Will you marry me? Olivia couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. All her life, she'd been told in 1,000 different ways that she wasn't enough, that her worth was contingent on what others could take from her. But Rand was offering her something entirely different: unconditional love, respect, partnership. Yes, she managed, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Rand, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her feel precious and protected. Around them, applause broke out. The other dancers had noticed the proposal and gathered to watch, and now they cheered and congratulated the happy couple. They were married 6 weeks later in the same church on a cold December morning with snow falling softly outside. Olivia wore a new dress that Mrs. Whitmore had helped her make, simple white cotton with pearl buttons. Rand wore his best suit, and when Olivia walked down the aisle, the look on his face told her everything she needed to know about her worth in his eyes. Mrs. Whitmore cried through the entire ceremony. Mr. Granger stood as Rand's best man, and Mrs. Henderson served as Olivia's matron of honor. Sheriff Dalton attended, along with most of the town, cramming into the small church to witness the union. I, Randall Pierce, take you, Olivia Porter, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Rand said, his voice strong and sure. I promise to honor you, protect you, and love you all the days of my life. I promise to see your worth, even when you struggle to see it yourself. I promise to build a life with you based on respect and partnership and joy. Olivia repeated her own vows, her voice breaking with emotion. I, Olivia Porter, take you, Randall Pierce, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to trust you, support you, and love you with everything I have. I promise to learn to see myself through your eyes. I promise to build a life with you filled with kindness and hope and love. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Rand kissed Olivia like she was the most precious thing in the world, and she knew without doubt that she was finally home. They moved into a small house on the edge of town that Rand had been fixing up in secret for weeks. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a new stove, and a porch that looked out toward the hills. Rand had made furniture by hand, a table and chairs, a bed frame, shelves for Olivia's few books. It's not much yet, he said as he carried her over the threshold, but we'll make it into a home together. Olivia looked around the clean, simple rooms and felt her chest tighten with love. It's perfect. You're perfect. I'm far from perfect, Rand said with a laugh, but I'll spend every day trying to be the husband you deserve. Their first months of marriage were an adjustment, as all marriages are, but they navigated the challenges with patience and humor. Olivia learned that Rand snored when he slept on his back and had strong opinions about coffee. Rand learned that Olivia needed time alone in the mornings to gather her thoughts, and that she hoarded buttons in a tin box because she'd never had enough when she was young. They established routines and rituals that became the foundation of their life together. Morning coffee on the porch before work, holding hands during the walk to town, Sunday dinners that they took turns cooking. Rand continued working at the livery while Olivia kept her job at the bakery, both of them saving money toward the future they dreamed of. But beyond the practical details, what made their marriage work was the way Rand kept his promise to honor Olivia. When she had nightmares about her past, he held her until the fear passed. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of her strengths. When she achieved something, no matter how small, he celebrated with her. I sold 3 extra pies today, Olivia announced one evening, practically glowing with pride. Rand swept her into his arms and spun her around the kitchen. That's my wife, the best baker in South Dakota. I'm not the best, Olivia protested, laughing. You are to me, and you're getting better every day because you work hard and care about what you do. That matters, Olivia. You matter. Over time, those constant affirmations began to change how Olivia saw herself. The voice in her head that said she wasn't good enough grew quieter, drowned out by Rand's steady belief in her. She started taking pride in her work, suggesting new recipes to Mrs. Whitmore, experimenting with flavors. She made friends with other women in town, accepting invitations to quilting circles and church socials instead of hiding away. The change didn't happen overnight. There were still difficult days when old wounds ached, when Olivia struggled to believe she deserved the happiness she'd found. But Rand was always there, patient and loving, reminding her that worth wasn't earned through suffering or measured by what had been stolen. It was inherent, unchangeable, a fundamental truth of who she was. 1 year into their marriage, on a warm spring evening, Olivia realized she hadn't thought about her past in weeks. She'd been too busy living in the present, building a future with Rand. They sat on their porch, watching the sunset, Rand's arm around her shoulders. What are you thinking about? He asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. How different my life is now. How you changed everything. Olivia turned to look at him. I was so broken when we met, Rand. I didn't think I could ever be whole again. You were never broken, love. You were hurt, but that's not the same thing. And you did the healing yourself. I just reminded you what was already there. Olivia shook her head. It's more than that. You showed me what love really looks like. What it means to be valued for who I am, not what I can give. That's a gift I'll never be able to repay. You repay it every day by being you, by trusting me with your heart, by building this life with me. Rand's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. I'm the lucky one, Olivia. Don't ever forget that. In their 2nd year of marriage, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She'd never known a loving home as a child, had no model for what good parenting looked like. What if she failed? What if she passed on her brokenness to her child? Rand found her crying in the kitchen one morning, the positive signs of pregnancy clear in her body's changes. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. Talk to me, love. What's wrong? I don't know how to be a mother, Olivia sobbed. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I hurt our baby the way I was hurt? You won't, Rand said with absolute certainty. You know what not to do, and that's more than some parents start with. And you won't be alone in this, Olivia. We'll figure it out together, just like we figure everything out. Over the following months, Rand proved his words true. He read books about childbirth and infant care, attended doctor appointments, helped prepare the 2nd bedroom as a nursery. When Olivia's body changed and she felt ungainly and unattractive, Rand told her she'd never been more beautiful. When labor pains started on a cold November night, he stayed by her side through every contraction, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. Their son was born just after dawn, red-faced and squalling, perfect in every way. The doctor placed him in Olivia's arms, and she stared down at the tiny life she and Rand had created, overwhelmed with love so fierce it hurt. Hello, little one, she whispered. I'm your mama, and I promise I'll do everything I can to show you how much you're loved. Rand stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. He's beautiful, Olivia. He's perfect. They named him Robert Daniel Pierce, Robert after Rand's father, and Daniel after Olivia's brother, who died as a baby, one of the few happy memories from her childhood. Little Robert had Rand's gray eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and from the moment he arrived, he was the center of their world. Parenthood was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Olivia gave up her job at the bakery to stay home with Robert, though Mrs. Whitmore still sent money for recipes and occasionally hired her to make special orders. Rand continued at the livery, but came home every evening eager to hold his son, to help with feedings and diaper changes, to share the load. "You're such a good father," Olivia told him one night, watching as he rocked Robert to sleep, singing a cowboy lullaby in his deep voice. "I'm learning," Rand said softly, "just like you're learning to be a mother. And you're wonderful at it, Olivia. Look at how content he is, how loved. You did that." As Robert grew from infant to toddler, Olivia marveled at the difference between her childhood and his. Robert would never know hunger or fear or neglect. He would grow up in a home filled with laughter and affection, where his parents cherished each other and him. He would learn from Rand's example what it meant to be a good man, and from Olivia's example what it meant to overcome adversity with grace. When Robert was 2, Olivia became pregnant again. This time, the fear was less, replaced by excitement and confidence. She knew what to expect, knew she could handle it, knew Rand would be there every step of the way. Their daughter was born on a warm June evening, arriving so quickly that the doctor barely made it in time. She had Olivia's green eyes and a full head of blonde hair that came from some distant ancestor neither of them could place. They named her Rose Marie, Rose because Rand said Olivia reminded him of a flower that bloomed despite harsh conditions, and Marie after Rand's mother. Robert was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. "Gentle," Olivia coached as he patted Rose's tiny hand. "She's very small and delicate." "I'll protect her," Robert announced with toddler seriousness, "like Papa protects you." Rand caught Olivia's eye over their children's heads, and they shared a smile. This was what they'd built together, a family grounded in love and respect, a home where worth wasn't measured by external standards, but by the inherent value of each person. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. The house rang with noise and activity, and Olivia sometimes collapsed into bed exhausted. But it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from a full, purposeful life. She'd never imagined she could be this happy, this fulfilled. When Rose was 6 months old, Mr. Granger approached Rand with an offer. He was getting older and wanted to retire, and he offered to sell the livery to Rand at a price they could afford by making payments over time. It was a huge opportunity, a chance for Rand to own his own business and build real security for his family. "What do you think?" Rand asked Olivia that evening after the children were asleep. "It's a lot of responsibility, and it means we'll be tied to Custer for the foreseeable future." "I think Custer is home," Olivia said simply. "I think this is where we're meant to be, and I think you'll be wonderful at running the livery. Mr. Granger wouldn't offer if he didn't believe in you." They shook hands with Mr. Granger the next day, and within a month, the livery officially changed hands. Rand proved to be a natural businessman, honest and fair in his dealings, skilled at the work and good with customers. The livery thrived under his management, providing a stable income for their growing family. Years passed in a blur of milestones and memories. Robert started school and proved to be a bright, kind child who made friends easily. Rose grew into a spirited little girl who followed her brother everywhere and asked endless questions about everything. Olivia's confidence as a mother grew with each passing season, and the scared, broken young woman she'd once been became a distant memory. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Rand took Olivia back to the creek where he'd proposed. The children stayed with Mrs. Whitmore, who still ran the bakery with as much energy as ever, despite being well into her 70s. "I can't believe it's been 10 years, Olivia said, settling onto the blanket Rand had spread on the grass. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "Best 10 years of my life," Rand said, pulling out a picnic basket. "I have something for you." He handed her a leather journal, and when Olivia opened it, she found pages filled with Rand's handwriting. Each entry was dated, starting from the day they met. "I've been writing down memories," Rand explained. "Things I don't want to forget. The first time you smiled at me, really smiled, the day you said yes to my proposal, Robert's birth, Rose learning to walk, all the moments that made up our life together. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she read entries at random. Rand's love poured from every word, his appreciation for her clear on every page. There's an entry for yesterday, he said softly. Read it. Olivia flipped to the most recent page and read aloud. Yesterday, I watched Olivia teaching Rose how to braid her hair. Rose was frustrated because she couldn't get it right, and Olivia was so patient, showing her over and over until she understood. I thought about the woman I met 10 years ago, who didn't believe she had anything to offer. Now she's raising two beautiful children and filling our home with love. She's my partner in every sense of the word, my best friend, the love of my life. If I could go back and tell that younger version of myself anything, I'd tell him he's about to meet the most remarkable woman in the world, and he should hold on tight and never let go. Olivia closed the journal and set it carefully aside before launching herself into Rand's arms. He caught her easily, holding her close while she cried happy tears into his shoulder. I love you, she said when she could speak. I love you so much, Rand. Thank you for seeing me, for valuing me, for showing me what I was worth when I couldn't see it myself. You're everything, Rand whispered against her hair, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. They lay on the blanket watching clouds drift across the sky, hands linked, hearts full. Around them, the Black Hills stretched in all directions, beautiful and wild and home. Over the next years, their family continued to grow in unexpected ways. Mrs. Whitmore passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 78, leaving the bakery to Olivia in her will. She was more of a mother to me than my own ever was, Olivia told Rand through tears. I wouldn't be here without her. Then we'll honor her memory by keeping the bakery running, Rand said. You always loved baking. Maybe it's time to pursue that again. With Rand's support, Olivia reopened the bakery, hiring help so she could balance the business with motherhood. Her pies and breads became even more popular than before, and the bakery thrived. More importantly, it gave Olivia a sense of purpose beyond her family, proof that she could build something of value on her own terms. When Robert turned 16, he started working at the livery alongside his father, learning the business from the ground up. He'd grown into a fine young man, tall like Rand, with his mother's gentle nature. Rose, at 14, helped at the bakery after school and showed real talent for decorating cakes. They're good kids, Rand said one evening, watching Robert demonstrate proper horseshoeing technique to a customer while Rose arranged fresh bread in the bakery window across the street. We did well, you and I. We did, Olivia agreed, slipping her hand into his. They know their worth. They know they're loved unconditionally. That's the greatest gift we could give them. As Olivia approached her 40th birthday, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She'd started life as a girl who believed she was worthless, whose value had been measured only by what others could take from her. But Rand had taught her a different truth. That worth was inherent, unchangeable, rooted in the simple fact of being human. That lesson had transformed everything. It had allowed her to accept love, to build a family, to pursue her dreams. It had given her the courage to see herself as valuable, capable, deserving of good things. And now she was passing that lesson on to her children, breaking the cycle of pain that had defined her early life. One spring morning, a young woman came into the bakery. She was thin and worn, with frightened eyes and bruises fading on her arms. She asked timidly if Olivia was hiring, and something about her reminded Olivia so strongly of her younger self that her heart ached. What's your name? Olivia asked gently. Sarah, madam. Sarah Miller. I just arrived in Custer yesterday, and I need work. I'm willing to do anything. Olivia saw herself in Sarah's desperate hope, her expectation of rejection. She made a decision in an instant. I am hiring as it happens. When can you start? Sarah's eyes widened. Really? Just like that? Don't you want to know more about me? I know enough. You're here, you need help, and I'm in a position to offer it. Olivia smiled. We've all needed help at some point, Sarah, and we all deserve a chance. Over the following months, Olivia took Sarah under her wing, much as Mrs. Whitmore had once done for her. She taught her to bake, paid her fairly, and offered the room above the bakery rent-free until Sarah could afford her own place. She listened when Sarah shared fragments of her story: an abusive home, a dangerous escape, dreams of starting over. Rand supported the arrangement completely. You're giving her what you needed, he told Olivia, showing her that not everyone will hurt her. That's powerful, love. Sarah flourished under Olivia's mentorship, gaining confidence and skill. And watching Sarah's transformation, Olivia saw her own journey reflected back. She understood with crystal clarity that breaking cycles of pain required people willing to extend kindness, to see worth where others saw only vulnerability, to measure value by who someone was rather than what they'd endured. On Olivia and Rand's 20th anniversary, their children planned a surprise party. The house filled with friends and neighbors, people whose lives had been touched by the Pierces' kindness and integrity. Sarah was there, now married herself with a baby on the way. Sheriff Dalton, retired but still sharp, came and told stories about the day Rand had faced down Vernon Cass. Mr. Granger, ancient now but still vital, reminisced about teaching Rand the livery business. As speeches were made and toasts offered, Olivia stood beside Rand and marveled at the life they'd built. She thought about the terrified young woman who'd had a gun pressed to her temple 20 years ago, who'd believed she was worthless, disposable. She thought about the cowboy who'd stepped in to help, not because he wanted something, but because it was right. And she thought about all the moments since: the courtship, the marriage, the children, the business, the friendships. Every single piece had come from that foundational truth Rand had taught her, that worth wasn't measured by what was taken, but by who you were at your core. Speech! Someone called, and Rand squeezed Olivia's hand. You do it, he murmured. You're better with words than I am. Olivia stepped forward, her heart full to bursting. I'm not good at speeches, she began, but I want to say something about worth. When I was young, I thought my value came from what I could offer others. I thought it could be stolen, diminished, destroyed. I measured myself by what had been taken from me, and by that measure, I found myself lacking. She looked at Rand, who watched her with those steady gray eyes that still made her heart skip. Then I met a cowboy who taught me different. He showed me that worth isn't external. It can't be stolen or earned or lost. It simply is. And when you understand that, when you really believe it, everything changes. Olivia's gaze swept the room, touching on each beloved face. Rand didn't save me. I want to be clear about that. But he saw me when I couldn't see myself. He valued me when I thought I was worthless. And in doing so, he gave me the courage to rebuild myself into the person I was always meant to be. She returned to Rand's side, and he wrapped his arm around her waist. 20 years ago, you asked me to marry you. You promised to spend your life showing me that I was valued for who I was, not what I could give. You've kept that promise every single day. And I want to promise you something in return. Olivia's voice strengthened, carrying clearly through the room. I promise to keep passing on what you taught me, to raise our children with that understanding, to help others like Sarah see their own worth, to build a legacy of love and respect and dignity. Because that's what you've given me, Rand. Not just a life, but a reason for living. Not just a home, but a foundation to build on. Not just love, but the knowledge that I'm worthy of being loved. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Rand pulled Olivia close and kissed her forehead, unable to speak past the emotion in his throat. Around them, applause broke out, but Olivia barely heard it. She was too focused on the man beside her, the love of her life, the person who'd changed everything simply by seeing her truly. The party continued late into the night, filled with laughter and music and joy. When the last guests finally left, Olivia and Rand stood on their porch in the darkness, watching stars wheel overhead. "That was quite a speech," Rand said softly. "You made me cry in front of the whole town. Good. You deserve to know what you mean to me." Olivia leaned into his embrace, perfectly content. "I was thinking today about that first morning when you came to the bakery for coffee. Do you remember? I remember everything about our early days. You were so guarded, so careful, but I saw glimpses of who you really were underneath all that fear." Rand's hand traced idle patterns on her back. "I knew even then that you were special, Olivia, that if you'd just let me in, we could build something extraordinary." "You were right. We did." Olivia tilted her head back to look at him. 20 years, 2 children, 2 businesses, countless memories, and I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. Is that even possible? "I think love grows," Rand said thoughtfully. "Like a tree. It starts as a seed, but with care and time, it becomes something massive and unshakable. That's what we've built, Olivia. Something that will outlast us, that will continue through our children and their children." They stood in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd learned each other so well that words often weren't necessary. Finally, Rand spoke again. "You know what I'm most proud of? Not the livery or our family, though those mean everything. I'm most proud that you learned to see yourself the way I've always seen you. That broken girl is gone, Olivia. In her place is a strong, confident woman who knows her own worth. That transformation is the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed." Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, tears of gratitude and love and completion. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Maybe, but you did the hard work. I just held up a mirror and showed you what was already there." Rand wiped her tears with his thumb. "Come on, let's go to bed. Tomorrow starts another 20 years, and I don't want to miss a single moment." As they went inside, Olivia glanced back at the night sky one last time. Somewhere out there, beneath those same stars, other women were struggling like she'd once struggled, measuring their worth by what had been stolen from them. She said a silent prayer that they'd find their own versions of Rand, people who would see their true value and reflect it back until they could see it themselves, because that was the real lesson, the one that had taken her years to fully understand. Worth wasn't dependent on circumstances or other people's opinions. It was inherent and unchangeable. And once you knew that, truly knew it in your bones, nothing could take it away. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. Robert married a lovely young woman named Emma and took over running the livery when Rand decided to step back. Rose married a teacher named James and opened a second bakery location in the next town over. Grandchildren arrived, filling Olivia and Rand's later years with the chaos and joy of new life. Through it all, Rand and Olivia remained each other's anchor. They aged together gracefully, gray threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes. But their love never wavered. If anything, it strengthened with each passing year, tested and proven by time. On their 40th anniversary, they returned once more to the creek where Rand had proposed. They moved slower now, but their steps were sure, hands linked as they'd been for 4 decades. 40 years, Olivia marveled, settling onto the blanket Rand spread. "We've lived an entire lifetime together." "Best lifetime I could imagine," Rand said, easing down beside her. His joints creaked more than they used to, but his smile was unchanged. "You know what I was thinking about today? That first moment I saw you, standing in the street with a gun to your head. You were so scared, but you held yourself together. Even then, I saw your strength. I didn't feel strong. I felt like the world's punching bag." Olivia laced her fingers through his. "But you saw something different. You saw possibilities where I saw only limitations." Because they were always there, love, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Rand lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, the gesture as tender as it had been 40 years ago. Can I tell you something I've never told you before? Olivia raised her eyebrows. After 40 years of marriage, I thought there were no secrets left. Not a secret exactly, just something I never put into words. Rand's gray eyes were serious. That day, when I stopped Vernon Cass from robbing you, I didn't do it because it was right. Though it was. I did it because something in me recognized something in you, like my soul knew yours, even though we'd never met. Does that sound foolish? No, Olivia whispered, her throat tight. It sounds like fate, like we were always meant to find each other. I believe that. I believe some people are made to be together, to complete each other. You taught me as much as I taught you, Olivia. You showed me what real strength looks like, what it means to overcome adversity without becoming bitter, how to love fully, even after being hurt. Those are gifts I treasure. They sat in the afternoon sun, two old people who'd built a life of meaning and purpose from the most unpromising beginning. Around them, Custer had grown and changed, but the creek still flowed, the hills still stood, and their love remained constant. What do you think happens next? Olivia asked. We're not young anymore, Rand. We've lived most of our lives. Then we live what's left as fully as we can, Rand said simply. We enjoy our grandchildren. We keep working as long as we're able. We sit on the porch in the evenings and count our blessings. And when the time comes, we'll face whatever's next together, just like we've faced everything else. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder, comforted by his solid presence. Do you have any regrets? Not a single one. Do you? Only that I didn't meet you sooner. That I had to suffer so much before finding you. Olivia paused. But maybe I needed those experiences to appreciate what we have. Maybe I wouldn't have valued your love if I hadn't known what it was to be devalued. Maybe, Rand agreed. Or maybe the universe was just cruel until it decided to be kind. Either way, I'm grateful for every moment we've had. They stayed by the creek until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As they walked back to town, moving slowly but steadily, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her from that terrified young woman to this contented older one. Her worth had been measured by what was taken, her safety, her trust, her belief in goodness. The world had stolen from her over and over, leaving her empty and afraid. But then a cowboy had stepped into her life and measured her worth differently. He'd seen who she was beneath the wounds and scars. He'd valued her strength, her kindness, her resilience. And in doing so, he'd given her back to herself. That was the true miracle of their love story, Olivia realized. Not that Rand had saved her, but that he'd helped her save herself. He'd held up a mirror and shown her the truth until she could see it without his help. And then together, they'd built something beautiful and lasting, a testament to the power of seeing and being seen truly. 5 years later, on a cold winter morning, Rand passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 74 years old, and he'd lived every day of his life with integrity and love. Olivia held his hand as he took his last breath, her tears falling freely, but her heart at peace. They'd had 45 years together, and not one of them had been wasted. At his funeral, the church overflowed with people whose lives Rand had touched. Robert gave a eulogy that captured his father's character perfectly: honest, kind, steadfast. Rose sang a hymn that had been Rand's favorite, and Olivia sat in the front pew, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and knew that Rand's legacy would live on through all of them. In the months after Rand's death, Olivia grieved deeply but without despair. She missed him terribly, felt his absence in 1,000 small ways, but she didn't fall apart. She was stronger than that now, strong enough to carry on even when her heart was broken. Rand had taught her that strength, had shown her she could survive anything. She continued running the bakery with Rose's help, finding comfort in the familiar routines. She spent time with her grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and making sure they understood his lessons about worth and value. She maintained the house and garden that she and Rand had built together, keeping everything just as he'd left it. And every Sunday, she visited his grave and told him about her week, updating him on family news and town gossip. It helped to talk to him, even though he couldn't answer. His presence lingered in her heart, as much a part of her as her own heartbeat. On what would have been their 50th anniversary, Olivia returned to the creek one final time. She was 72 now, her hair completely white, her movements careful. But her mind was sharp, and her heart remained full of love. She spread a blanket on the same spot where Rand had proposed all those years ago and pulled out the journal he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. She'd continued it after his death, adding her own entries about memories they'd shared. Now she turned to a fresh page and wrote a final entry. My dearest Rand, 50 years ago today, you asked me to marry you. You promised to show me my worth, and you kept that promise every single day until your last breath. Now I want to make you a promise in return. I promise to keep living fully, to keep passing on what you taught me, to keep your memory alive through our children and grandchildren. I promise to face whatever time I have left with the courage you showed me I possessed. And I promise that when my time comes, I'll do so knowing that I was loved completely, valued utterly, and that my life had meaning because you were in it. Olivia closed the journal and held it to her chest, feeling the sun warm on her face. Around her, the Black Hills stood eternal and beautiful, witness to a love story that had transformed 2 lives and countless others. She stayed by the creek until the light began to fade, remembering every precious moment she'd shared with Rand, the proposal, the wedding, the birth of their children, the building of their businesses, the challenges overcome, and triumphs celebrated. Every memory was a treasure, proof that she'd been loved and valued for exactly who she was. As Olivia made her way back to town, she passed Sarah's bakery. Through the window, she could see Sarah teaching her own daughter to decorate a cake, the same patient kindness in her expression that Olivia had once shown her. The cycle continued, she thought with satisfaction. The lesson about worth passed from one generation to the next, spreading like ripples across water. Olivia lived another 8 years, remaining active and engaged until the very end. She saw her grandchildren graduate and marry and start families of their own. She celebrated the continued success of the bakeries and livery. She maintained her friendships and kept her home beautiful. And every day, she carried Rand with her, his love and lessons woven into the fabric of who she was. When Olivia finally passed at age 80, surrounded by family, her last thoughts were of Rand. She imagined him waiting for her, young and strong again, with that slow smile and those steady gray eyes. She imagined him taking her hand and saying what he'd said so many times during their life together. I see your worth, Olivia. I always have. And as she took her last breath, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that her life had mattered, not because of what she'd accomplished or accumulated, but because of who she'd been. A woman who'd learned her worth, who'd loved deeply, who'd passed on the greatest lesson of all. Her worth had been measured by what was taken, until a cowboy measured her worth by who she was. And in doing so, he'd given her not just a life, but a legacy that would endure long after both of them were gone. The bakeries continued under Rose's management, known throughout the region for quality and fair dealing. The livery thrived under Robert's care, maintaining the reputation for integrity that Rand had established. And the grandchildren grew into adults who understood that every person had inherent value, who measured others by character rather than circumstance, who extended kindness because it was right. Years later, a young woman came to Custer, alone and afraid, measuring her worth by what had been stolen from her. And Rose, remembering her mother's story, reached out with help and kindness, reflecting back the young woman's value until she could see it herself. The cycle continued, generation after generation, an unending legacy of love built on the foundation that Rand and Olivia had laid. Their love story became legend in Custer, told and retold until it took on mythic proportions. But at its heart remained a simple truth that worth is inherent, unchangeable, and sacred. That seeing someone truly, valuing them completely, can transform lives and break cycles of pain. That love, real love, measures worth by who someone is rather than what they've endured or what they can offer. And on quiet nights, when the stars wheel overhead and the wind whispers through the black hills, some say you can still see them, an old cowboy and his wife walking hand in hand by the creek where it all began. Eternal proof that love endures and worth can never truly be taken away.